They had found jars of gold coins there. They found the buried pistol, all the typical KGC signs and symbols. They kept everybody in their homes while the afternoon recovery of the gold bars and the morning recovery of the gold bars was taking place. They kept people in their homes. So 12 cubic feet of gold, that's about 8 or 9 tons.
They would not let you go up to the dig site. They forbid you to go up there.
The FBI agent would look me in the eyes, and when I stepped towards the tent, this FBI agent yelled at me, "Get away from the tent." We think they put some of the excess gold in there. We got a tip from a local cop that the armored cars had come in right behind us. If they say nothing was found, why do you send in armored cars the next day right behind us when we couldn't see them to pick up the gold when nothing was found? We know you did a night dig. We know you sent in the armored cars the next day because you don't bring in armored cars if you found nothing. We were under armed guard the whole time. We could never see them removing the gold, but the witnesses saw activity at 4 in the morning.
Hey guys, online with me, man. I'm pretty excited about this. I got Warren Getler with me, man, who is not just some researcher, who's not just, anybody, but he got interested. And I don't know how he got interested, but he got interested in the KGC treasure. And if you don't know what that is, I'll let him explain it to you. But he's written a book, Rebel Gold. But not only that, he's going to be one of our main speakers at the 2025 Moon Lake Gathering on August 14th, 15th, and 16th at the Duchesne Event Center. So with that said, Warren, I would just want to say, take it away. But first, I want to ask you, tell these people, you've told me, but tell these people who you are. You're a journalist, but you're not just any journalist. You're into digging into facts and finding out the truth and finding out what's what. Tell me your background and then tell me why you got interested in the Knights of the Golden Circle, the KGC treasure.
Hey, Terry, thanks for having me. That was quite the intro. I love it. Well, yeah, I spent a lot of years with the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, International Herald Tribune, Discovery Channel. And in that time of being a journalist, I covered lots of topics. And this one kind of came into my view accidentally when I was actually in Oklahoma. And my interest was sparked because I was always a guy who loved fossils, finding things underground, arrowheads, fossils, minerals, and gems. But all of a sudden, my paleontology world turned to treasure, AU and AG. It's a long story. My initial interest in the story of the Knights of the Golden Circle, the most powerful organization in American history, I would say, subversive organization, but definitely very, very powerful, came when I ran into Bob Brewer. And I ran into Bob Brewer because I was down in Oklahoma with a friend who was a professor at the University of Oklahoma, Alan Witten. Alan was the top geophysicist for near surface discovery. So there's science in looking really deep for oil, and then there's science in the subsurface, the near surface. And he was an expert in that. He used to work at the national labs. So eventually we formed a company, Witten Technologies. But Witten, the professor, invited me down to Oklahoma, and we talked about, I talked about seeking truth as a journalist, in religion, and all these other things. It was geophysics for jocks, basically, the 101 class, graduate. And I think it just went nowhere, my lecture. But at the end of my lecture, these two sisters came up, the Gillespie sisters from Oklahoma. And they had reached out to Alan. This is all in Oklahoma. And they said, "Professor Witten, we heard that you're great in finding stuff underground with all your technology." And he said, "Sure, why don't you come and talk to my class?" And because they had found something. And what they had found is the information that Bob Brewer had sent to the girls, the sisters, that Bob and Michael Griffith had found Jesse James coins on their property. And Bob later told the girls that he didn't realize there was a trespass and they didn't have permission. Michael apparently didn't tell him. But they had found jars of gold coins there. They found the buried pistol, all the typical KGC signs and symbols. So when I saw the videotape that Bob had taken and sent to the girls apologizing, saying, "I want to come back and help you find the remaining coins on the property," I said, I got to meet this guy, Bob Brewer. Who is he? Because I went up to them after their presentation of the tape, and they said, we'll set you up. So I went to see Bob Brewer a month later in Oklahoma, and near the border of Arkansas. Bob's near the border of Arkansas, Oklahoma. And the first thing he said is, remember this, you're coming to me. I'm not coming to you. And he said, remember this, this is dangerous. Remember this, it goes back hundreds of years. You know, my ancestors were involved, and I'm supposed to be a sentinel who protected this stuff, but I was never really given the full story. So I said, he looked at me and he said, are you in? I said, man, I'm in. Let's go. And, that was, I'll tell you when that was, 1998. So 27 years ago. And this story, this journey, this saga has kept with me for all those years. Do I do it every day? No. Does it enter my head every day? Probably. Do I get phone calls from people all over the country saying they've got, great grandparents who are involved, they've got carvings, they found some things underground? Yes. And it's been fascinating ever since.
Cool. So for those, first off, for those that Bob Brewer, he also went by Hillbilly Bob Brewer. But for those that don't know what the KGC Treasures, the Knights of the Golden Circle is, man, explain a little bit about what that is.
Well, and credit to you. Floyd Mann was interviewed by you a long time ago and gave a talk. Floyd, I knew back in the day. I really liked Floyd. He's very knowledgeable, and he was in that circle with Bob. Bob Brewer, like I said, turned me on to this, taught me a lot. I've been doing lots of research ever since. I've been to probably 20 Knights of the Golden Circle depository sites in the country, all the way from the Carolinas, all the way to California. I'm in California now. Um, they would bury gold and silver and arms, the Knights of the Golden Circle, for the resurrection of the Civil War on grounds and timing of their choosing, because the South essentially lost the war due to resource gaps compared to the North. Um, and the Knights of the Golden Circle was not by any means a fly-by-night operation. The most important thing you need to know about the Knights of the Golden Circle is that it was a real conspiracy. So what I'm saying is not conspiracy thinking. It was such a massive conspiracy that Lincoln had a whole department chasing it. And then the Pinkertons after the war chased it. And Jesse James was their field commander. So it was known as the Great Conspiracy by the Union government. Every single conspirator in the Booth assassination plot, everyone was questioned, are you a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle? Lincoln was consistently warned, they're out to kill you. They're out to destroy the Union from within, not just from the South, where they helped foment the Civil War, and their units were guerrilla units, right? And we know about Quantrell and others, very tied into the KGC. But they also were very active as, let me call them the Viet Cong of the North. They were active in Indiana, in Ohio, in Illinois, in Pennsylvania, where the Confederate sympathizing opposition was very active, not just protesting, but as a militant group. Like I said, the Viet Cong type operation underground. But the most important thing about in addition to it being a real conspiracy, was they were a syndicate. And what do I mean by that? Well, we all know that Jesse, and we're going to get to this, there were two Jessies. Jesse was all about robbing banks and stagecoaches and trains. And the KGC in its early formation was all about stealing from the armories of the Union. Some of them were fed to the South, raiding them before the Civil War happened. It's all archived, this information. But Jesse was much bigger than a bank robber. Jesse ran the syndicate that was this KGC after the Civil War. Jesse was too young to run it during the Civil War, but he was a KGC member during the war. Afterwards, he was anointed the commander, the field commander, the treasurer of the KGC, whose mission, if he chose to accept it, was to pull together all the gold, silver, and weapons that he could and bury them with coded symbolism that would get you back to the site if you remember. Throughout the country, I'm talking North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, North Carolina. And you might ask, well, how do you know? Because I've been to so many of them. And the way you know that this was a syndicate, which was mining gold and copper and silver in Montana and everywhere else, Colorado dust, gold dust, California, was the amount of gold and silver they buried was so massive. I can show you headlines from California in the 70s, 100 billion in Confederate gold buried. Now, I'm a conservative person in terms I don't get ahead of my skis. And I agree, there's that much gold buried. Some of it, will be rather astonishing to some of your listeners, not all, is still guarded by the remnant organization. There is an organization still. Is it the KGC? It's a descendant organization. They still protect the big ones. I know for a fact they're guarded, respect. Others are forgotten, literally forgotten. And the fascinating thing here is they're really, really smart people who have read the book, and I'll show it to you, Rebel Gold, that I wrote with Bob Brewer. And this book has lots of information. We left a lot out, but there's lots of information in here. And this book, the Black Book, by Jesse James III and Del Schrader, who is a local California journalist. That book, these two books go together. So for the past 30 years, I've been on a quest to show the reality of the nationwide, underground, subversive organization, the most powerful ever to exist in the United States, the Knights of the Golden Circle.
So that, you told me this before, and that kind of shocked me because I didn't realize this, that there was still people that was guarding some of this treasure. And that kind of blew my mind. And so your book, which is fascinating and has a lot of the history in it and a lot of what went down, you had to leave some out for maybe fear of your life and things like that, I'm imagining. And maybe some secrets that you kind of checking yourself.
Well, as a journalist, and now I'm a treasure hunter too, in a sense, we're seeking the truth. We're trying to pull a few of these out to prove just how accurate these two books are, and the role of Jesse James and the role of John Wilkes Booth. They're all in here in this organization. So, yes, the organization definitely still exists. I've said so on TV a bunch of times. The first chapter in Rebel Gold is a chapter where Bob went back to find some stuff, and an effigy noose was put right where he was looking the next day. I've had conversations with people where very polite, but it's clear they're conveying information, right? And I think the organization doesn't mind that the real story, the Knights of the Golden Circle, comes to the surface now. Why should it not? It's as important as anything you read in the history books today. The history books today are about Gettysburg and Vicksburg and Lee and the Northern General Grant and Sherman, but the Knights of the Golden Circle fomented the Civil War and their powers that be in Washington. The Knights of the Golden Circle were two things. They were Confederate and they were Scottish Rite Masonic. Two things you have to remember. And once you understand that, and you understand that they were a syndicate, they weren't just some fifth column of the Confederacy, the ununiformed Confederacy, which they were much more than that. And they proceeded to prepare for the next Civil War by burying these weapons and creating a coded depository system that's based on geography and geometry, wink, wink, Masonic, that is absolutely ingenious. Anybody who reads the book or the Black Book or starts to understand the power of this will realize this is amazing, and how come we haven't heard about it? The movie National Treasure Book of Secrets was based on Rebel Gold. The
Ah.
second, and to some extent, the first one I'll say right here, Disney stole it from us.
Hmm.
I'll say it. I don't care. After all these years, they made $500 million box office on it.
Wow.
Two movies. We were the first, Bob and I, to write about the truth of Masonic gold being theirs seemed like fiction, but it's not. Um, Truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. Um, so I'm here to answer questions. I gave you a bit of an overview. Lots of famous names are tied in directly to the Knights of the Golden Circle. And yes, we'll get into this. There were two Jesse James. Jesse James faked his death in 1882, 100%. I have absolute proof. And he not only faked his death, he faked the death of Jesse James, whose picture we all recognize in the wanted poster. That's his badass cousin, Jesse Robert James from Missouri. The real one, who's the mastermind, the genius of the Knights of the Golden Circle, is Jesse Woodson James. So
Hmm.
he faked their deaths. He actually killed Charlie Bigelow in St. Joe's in 1882, who was a rat impersonating Jesse. And I can tell you how it's all proven out. It's an absolutely amazing story. And the people who really know, they know. Jesse made a point in his treasure depositories to leave hints that he was not killed in 1882.
So, man, you're saying a lot of interesting things. That's got me going. Hmm. So you're saying that, and I've heard this from other people too. And there's only maybe a handful of people. There's not very many people like you that know the full story of what goes on. And but you're saying that some of these big treasures, some of these massive treasures, are still being guarded. Do they have a plan for them? Are they, the plan in the beginning is the South will rise again, and that was to help them to do that, but then the Spanish American War happened, and it kind of united the United States, and that kind of thwarted their plans of the South to rise again. Are they guarding these for some kind of a future event? Do you
Yeah,
know, or is is
that,
is that being said, or
awesome question. Awesome question, Terry. It's addressed in this book cryptically because I can't know. I'm not a member.
okay?
I'm a
Okay.
I'm a journalist who's interviewed presidents, heads of state, Margaret Thatcher, Chancellor Cole, that's what I did in my career. This is an amazing story because of some of the things you just mentioned. So yes, the mission of the Knights of the Golden Circle, according to Hawk, who's the grandson of the Jesse I'm talking about for sure, he said their mission kind of changed or ended with the entry into the First World War, maybe the Spanish-American War, but let's call it the First World War, 1914. Okay. That's when they kind of disbanded their mission of a revived Confederacy. But this Jesse lived till 1951, 1950. And he came out in public in 1948 saying he's the real Jesse. There are newsreels about it. We can get into that. So you asked me the question, why are they still guarding it? So, Terry, what are the two I'm going back to you. What are the two organizations that formed the Knights of the Golden Circle as the core powerhouses? What two groups?
Man, I don't really know other than, the Masonic Order, and you specifically named one.
The Scottish Rite, Masonic of Masonry, high-ranking Masonry that goes up to the honorary 33rd degree, and the Confederates, the Fire Breathers. Those two organizations formed the Knights of the Golden Circle. So, since the Confederacy no longer exists, um, maybe it's a Scottish Rite Masonic um, vision for the future. It come Armageddon, there's all this gold or silver. Look what's happening right now with Iran and Israel and Ukraine and Russia and China and Taiwan. But if you have mass stores of gold and silver buried underground, silver tarnishes, but gold doesn't do anything but sit there. Paper money goes away to dust. So if you're talking about over 100 billion in gold and potentially a lot more than that because of the volume of the bullion, right? The placer, the the hard material gold that's in stone that they buried, processed mostly, bullion, ingots, all that's different size of bullion, and coins, then there's got to be a reason why it's still being guarded, right?
Yeah.
And, and and the conspiracy theorists would use the term to create the financial underpinnings of a new world order or from chaos order. And I can tell you for a fact, I know they're still guarded because of all the things I've watched and seen happen and people I've interviewed. People, as you'll find out reading this, were examining a big window rock in a western state. You could see the window shaped like a heart in the rock formation. And when the KGC hunters got close with a metal detector, that current, electricity, triggered on a remote alarm. And within 15 minutes, a helicopter arrived, landed beyond the mesa, and a guy with a girl behind him. He was packing heat. He said, "What are you guys looking for?" And they said, "We're just looking for some minerals and gems and fossils out here." And the guy pointed to the window rock. He said, "Do you see the window rock over there? Were you looking for that?" And the guys were sweating bullets, sweating bullets. They all had their hands on their hips, ready to
Mm.
shoot. That's just one of many, many, many incidents. I've been in a situation not too long ago where in the air.
Mm.
So it's a very delicate situation. It's fascinating. It's the most important story in U.S. history. I think the organization or whatever it is doesn't mind the story getting out to some degree.
So, man, I got a million and one questions I want to ask you, but I don't want to step on your toes for what you're going to be presenting at the Moon Lake Gathering. And while I'm saying something about the Moon Lake Gathering, if any of you guys has got Warren's book, I'm sure Warren would love to sign it for you while he's there. And are you going to have some books there, Warren, to sell in case somebody wants to buy them?
I don't know. It's easy. Terry, these days it's so easy to go on Amazon and do it. Do it ahead of time, guys, if you love this story, and I'll sign them for you. But I'd love to help. And I hear it's a great event. I know Holly Remkis was there. She's been with me on TV and she does great work tracking this stuff down in Utah. And I think she's planning to be there and some other
I,
friends.
I hope so.
It's
She is great. She's always out doing stuffs too.
She's always finding cool things, and there's a lot of stuff coming to the surface right now. A guy I know in Tennessee has found the gold finger of Jesse. I'm not kidding. Jesse stuck his hand in a gold mold, and there's a beautiful index finger of Jesse. His index finger is very famous because the tip of it got injured. And we've got that. It's really incredible. And
Cool.
so many other things that are definitively Jesse James with his initials and other things. So, everybody who's interested in treasure, what we're talking about here is vault treasure, vaults, right? It's not really finding coins in a jar or coin shooting. It's specifically what's known as treasure trove, where it was buried to be rediscovered by insiders later on. And it's just amazing because every one of these treasure sites is marked by carvings of a turtle laying eggs, a turkey track, a duck, an owl, a snake, the number seven. And when you do this for so long, Terry, it's like becoming a CIA analyst. You look for patterns. It's all about pattern recognition. It had to be because the underground organization very rarely used maps. Sometimes they wrote them on Confederate uniforms or leather. We actually have the originals, and we've actually found where those maps lead to a massive underground vault with things in it like diamonds and other things. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So the organization was extremely tight. They used the same codes to tell you to go forward or backwards. The crescent moon with a dot in it means go the other way, but you're nearby. The numeric codes, the geography of the United States, the base maps, the names of counties. How about this one? everybody has to realize that Jesse did use many, many aliases and had many wives and had many children. And one of his um, major aliases was William A. Clark. And William A. Clark, or Clark, and itself different versions of Clark, is why Las Vegas is in Clark County, Nevada.
Really?
Jesse founded Las Vegas. Absolutely 100%.
Really?
Jesse lent money to Henry Ford. Jesse knew Edison. Jesse was the most powerful person in the world, along with his mentor, Albert Pike, the most powerful person in the world, the most powerful
Mm.
Mason in the world.
Couple things, man. I got a lot of things, but like I said, I don't want to derail you what you're going to talk about at the Moonlight Gathering. But
There's a million things to talk about.
one, yeah, one is at the gathering, man. I've got something specific I want to talk to you about, and it has to deal with, you said vaults. When you're talking vaults, would they physically build a vault, cut stones, build a vault in the ground, and
100%. That's what they did. They used caves. They used stuff that might have been put there by the Spaniards. They gathered up Spanish treasure too. But absolutely, they brought in the best engineers from Germany and Switzerland to work this. They built them 20 to 30 feet underground and so we dug up a vault in Arizona, just like the map said. We went into it, Bob and I and John, and I couldn't believe it. It was layered with trash, but the trash was symbolic. And when we got to the vault, it was huge, 12 by 14 feet. And there was an empty Wells Fargo strongbox in there that I recall. Absolutely, they did this. And they didn't just do that, they concealed everything. They put caliche and other they put some coatings, maybe lead over the booty. So, because Jesse was ahead of his time. In an interview, the real Jesse James in 1949, he was 100 years old, said, "Yeah, my posse is up in Ohio where I've been looking for this stuff, but they're not going to find it because I coded this stuff." He knew. He knew about X-ray. He knew about electromagnetics. He was a genius.
hmm,
And so they engineered these vaults. And the way they buried the vaults is all based on uh, geometric patterns and very esoteric things like the tree of life and things of that nature.
I was going to say, man, have I got some things that we got to talk about at the gathering? So, anyways, I'm excited about this. So another question. How long do you think, Jesse lived to be over 100 years? What did he continue his full entire life burying this stuff, or was there a point that he quit doing it, or
He did totally until his hip injury. You know, he had many, many serious wounds that he recovered from the Civil War and after. And he continued to be active, going to all these depositories with his grandson, Hawk. The big question is, did he trust Hawk as a confidant or did he not? But I think he knew with his photographic memory how to describe each burial that was significant, each depository. And Hawk would draw illustrated written maps of these sites. And damn, Terry, they're real. They exist. They're right. And his archive, there's an archive of all his letters. And he says, Grandpa buried a lot of money here. Look for the buried pistol. Look for the snake. Look for the turkey track. Look for the turtle. It's true. So what am I? I'm a guy, an investigative journalist who loves the underground, fossils, dinosaurs, all that. I had a huge collection. Who said, "Oh my God, this is the biggest story ever. This is the biggest story ever." And in fact, we're working some TV on this right now, like a potential series on this. And it's finally this story with Bob sparking it with me is getting its due. Bob wanted the story out. Bob is fascinating. He was taught um, by his grandfather some things and never told what he was actually being taught, like how to find these clues
hmm.
and what they meant. Not what they meant, but how to go from one to the next. And then he went off to Vietnam. He was a real hero in Vietnam. He fought. He was on board the helicopters, rescue missions, and whatnot as a warrant officer. And over there, time passed, and his great uncle wasn't really his grandfather, his great uncle passed away. So he was never told exactly what he was being trained to do. What was he being trained to do? In the 20th century, in the 60s, 70s, to be a sentinel to guard the property, just like Uncle Ode and the great Uncle Ashcraft did. They would go out every day, his relatives, on horseback and patrol the vault burials in the area every day. And we have their old diaries, and the diaries are of the template. You can see it. The template was their
Hmm.
mass shaped grid for burying this stuff. So, like I said, there's some very knowledgeable people. Floyd really knew this stuff a long time ago, and some people have written about the Knights of the Golden Circle purely from an academic point of view, like David Keene's book, which came about 10 years after ours. It's about who was in the KGC that they can document, right? But the full picture of their stuff in the field, their stuff in the tents during the war and afterwards, we try and get at it here, and there'll be another book that I'm doing, and there'll be more that's
Cool.
coming out. My goal is to see it taught in school and have guys like Bob Brewer lecture. There are a lot of guys in the field. Brad Richards got really into it. He was on the History Channel. Um, and there's some guys, on site like Chad Summers in Ohio, and Nick, another guy in Chad's been in a bunch of articles with me. Um, this young fellow in Tennessee, the group out in New Mexico. It's all coming to the surface now. And it involves, because of these vaults that you referred to that are deeply buried, it involves very significant scientific stuff, like the gravimeter that was the FBI brought in at my recommendation in Pennsylvania. That's a KGC site. There's a hoot owl tree that points to it. There's a buried disc underneath that says red hot from an old stove, and it points right to the cave where the stuff was. It's all KGC.
So you mentioned the FBI involvement, and you got involved and helped a group of treasure hunters that it's pretty well figured, man. They found the treasure. They did it the right way. They went and got permission and help with the FBI. They was going to get a finder's fee, and you was involved in helping that. And it looks like what happened was they got screwed. Can you talk about that at all? Or
Yeah, we definitely got screwed. The FBI agent would look me in the eyes and look Denny Parada, the father and the son team, finders keepers, and I've known Denny now for since November 2017. We talk every day. But anyway, the FBI agent who we brought this to, he looked like James Bond, Daniel Craig, kind of a nice guy. He would look me in the eye and he asked me, "How you doing?" Blah blah blah, and he turned and we could hear him say, "I hate this case." And he'd do the same thing to Denny. That was the night of the dig and the pre-night of the dig. Because, answer the question, why was he doing that? Why was he saying that to us?
he probably liked you guys and didn't really want to screw you.
Did I have to say it?
No,
Did
yeah,
I have to say it?
yeah, uh-uh.
And I said to him, "You're going to get a phone call from somebody before the dig happened, months before, and they're going to tell you certain things. You're not going to know who it is, and they're going to tell you exactly what to do."
And they did, huh? Uh,
So we went for a finder's fee. We weren't claiming that gold, which was significant, was way more than 25 bars. It was based on the shape and size that Denny was reading before I got to the scene. 2 by 2 by 3, so 12 cubic feet of gold. That's about 8 or 9 tons. And that's what the
wow.
reading from the gravimeter, I recommended the FBI use the gravimeter. And that's what the reading came back. And the density reading came back at 19.2, which is exactly that of gold, versus sandstone's density is 2 or 3. Huge differential. Um, so I was so shocked when the gravimeter was used. Now, one interesting thing is, on the science side of things, Really, if you ask me, the only things I can tell if there's a bulk of gold there is the gravimeter. The density signature is the telling thing most for gold. Other things can read ferrous, non-ferrous only, but specific to gold, it's that. Resistivity using the rods and the current underground also has a signature, the conductivity signature, the resistivity signature of gold is very specific. It's 2.44 ohms. But you can't have air around the target. So that's a limiting factor. If it's surrounded by dirt, the gold, and there's no air, you can use that. But for what the FBI was looking for, the gravity differential between this massive gold buried in sandstone layers, carved out, there shouldn't have been any mistake. And the guys who did it worked before as a geosurvey for the U.S. Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, with that same system.
Hmm.
That same, and when we went back, there was no signal, nothing.
So just to put this in perspective, the FBI came out and ran their own tests before they got involved. They wanted to know there was enough proof for them that yeah, there was something there.
They had to have the proof and to get the warrant to dig it up on state property from the judge. They relied on us to recommend these systems. They relied on us to recommend the survey firm that was in the area. We gave it to them. And they told us, guys, they stopped exactly knowing how deep the target was from the gravimeter. They stopped 3 feet above it. They had earphones on with their coin shooters. We couldn't hear anything. And they come to us at 3:30 and they say, guys, it's getting dark. It's getting cold. We'll see you tomorrow. Go home. But what they did, and we were going, what? You kept us in the car for 6 hours before here. You have us up for an hour. Now you're telling us to go home. We'll finish tomorrow. So
So before you finish that, and I want you to finish that, but they would not let you go up to the dig site. They forbid you to go up there. They made you sit down off the mountain and wait for them to come tell you it was found.
freezing our ass off, freezing our ass off. Uh, and I was getting really pissed in the back seat. Like, what the hell is going on? Denny, the dad, he wasn't saying a word. He was just watching like a hawk. And they finally let us up, make us sign some signature. They probably said, whatever. And in the end, they let us up the mountain the next day, and there was a big hole there, and the whole mountain, the whole side of the hill was disrupted, and they all stared at us like this. There were about 80 or 90 of them. And what do you see, Warren? What do you see, Denny? And I go, oh shit, we screwed up. I'm feeling guilty. And Denny goes, I don't see anything, but that doesn't mean there was nothing here yesterday. And when I went down the mountain, I was driven down. And when I stepped towards the tent that we were pushed in when the media came the first day, and don't say anything to me, this woman, this FBI agent yelled at me, get away from the tent, get away from the tent. Like, we think they put some of the excess gold in there. The
Hmm.
key, the key to the story is this. We were supposed to be their partners. We wanted to get a finder's fee. We did it by the book. Some state operators before were seemingly corrupt with Denny, and he didn't like that, so he backed out. So the only way this would come out of the ground is if the feds took it, because it was supposed to be a shipment of U.S. mint gold to the mint in Philadelphia, coming across from West Virginia. They try to avoid Lee coming up north, so they went up high like this to where Denny was. And we were supposed to get a finder's fee. And so we weren't claiming it was ours alone. And we were supposed to be partners. Who else works with the FBI for this amount of time so intensely, right?
Yeah.
And we were excited. We were pumped. And here's the gist of it. We know they did a damn night dig, and they weren't supposed to. The judge said from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. How do we know? Well, the witnesses could see the bright lights that were keeping them up. There were only a couple people living in the hunting lodge down there, and the noise kept her up all night. She was like the city treasurer or something. She was telling her husband, I can't sleep. These FBI guys are digging. It's 2 in the morning. And then
Wow.
and then an antler hunter, whatever they're called, they gather these antlers. He saw them and he came forward and he saw early that morning the 3 armored cars that were weighed down. So here's the point. If they say nothing was found, wait a minute. Why do you send in armored cars, 4 of them, the next day, right behind us when we couldn't see them? to pick up the gold behind the mountain when nothing was found. We know you did a night dig. We know you sent in the armored cars the next day. So you must have taken the gold away because you don't bring in armored cars if you found nothing. But Terry, the one thing we'll never be able to prove is the smoking ingot. We were under armed guard the whole time.
Mm.
We could never see them removing the gold, but the witnesses saw activity at 4 in the morning. The hunter guy with his mate, his client, and then they see the armored cars. The way we found out about it, and I'll keep it short here, is we got a tip from a cop there, a local cop, that the armored cars had come in right behind us
Wow.
the next morning. And
Wow.
they kept everybody in their homes while the afternoon recovery of the gold bars and the morning recovery of the gold bars was taking place. They kept people in their homes.
Wow. So all I got to say is Warren is I can't wait to meet you in person. I got a lot of questions for you, but also, man, these guys are in for a real treat. And if anybody is a KGC treasure hunter or they just want to know about the KGC treasure, the Knights of the Golden Circle, man, do not miss this event. It's free. Like I'm going to say again, August 14th, 15th, and 16th. We got a lot of great speakers. And our keynote, one of our keynotes is Warren here, who's got a wealth of knowledge that he's not putting in his book that he can't, but he just might share a few things with you in person. Who knows?
Yeah, thank you for all this, Terry. And I just say it's fascinating. A lot of people have these carvings on their property, in the South and Southwest in particular. The Jesse James history is fantastically interesting. The intrigue, the conspiracy, the family histories, and it's all a group effort. It's not one person. It's putting this knowledge together. Guys in the field, super smart. They might be down on their luck, but man, are they focused and they're finding interesting things and they love it. It's a passion. And the greats like Bob Brewer and others who are still around, the shared knowledge is pretty incredible because it is very esoteric, arcane, and but fascinating.
Cool. Any last words you want to say, Warren?
Yeah, be safe if you're tracking it down. Uh, be respectful of property issues, like do not go on property that has posted signs, no trespassing. You can't do that. Learn the laws of treasure trove recovery. States are very different. Some allow you to take it from somebody else's property without notification. Others, that's a crime. So you have to know what you're doing. And it's best to notify the owner that you might have something in their property and try and strike a deal. Know your equipment. You're not going to find the KGC treasure generally with metal detectors. You can find their buried stove parts, pistols, iron. Those were meant to tell you with the carvings right in that vicinity that you're on top of a treasure and you're supposed to dig down. But they buried china, they buried charcoal, they buried iron because a dip needle compass of the day was the metal detector, and that would pivot, that would deviate over a large piece of iron scrap. But don't go hunting for this in a scrap yard or a trash yard. That'll drive you crazy. You have to look, if you're hunting KGC treasure, you have to the carved symbols. They can be on trees, on beech trees, oak trees. Beeches can last 200 years, very thick. Certain rock faces and certain stones that are on the ground that are absolutely shaped like a heart, triangles. It's fascinating. It's a puzzle. It's like a Easter egg hunt on steroids.
And with that said, Warren, if you guys are planning on coming to the Moon Lake Gathering, man, if you don't already have Warren's book, pick it up and have him come and sign it because that makes it just a little bit more valuable. And there's a lot of great information in there. And if you're a treasure hunting and you don't know about the KGC treasure, you need to learn because it's not in just one little area. It's scattered all over the Americas. So, and with that said, Warren, man, I really appreciate it. And like I said, I can't wait to meet you in person in August. And that's a wrap.
Thanks, Terry. It was a lot of great fun being with you and look forward to seeing you guys.